It happened 2 years ago, Simchas Torah, and they had a minyan in the Seidov Tower. Mordechai Fishman was the gabbai of that minyan.
It was a group of about 30 families and some bachrim that attended as well, and we were dancing. It was Labor Day. We had a great time.
And suddenly, as they were dancing around and around, one of the people holding the Sefer Torah bumped into somebody else.
And all of a sudden, the Sefer slips out of his hand and falls down to the floor. And we all look down and we're like, oh my goodness.
Now you can imagine going from Simchas Torah to Tisha B'Av in just a minute. Everybody stopped dancing. And everybody looked at that fellow who had just dropped the Sefer Torah. And the fellow turned white.
He ran out of shul. The second that happened, was in shock, was totally very, very depressed.
Nobody knew what to do. Everybody knew it's trouble. It means we have to fast, we have to give tzedakah, we're gonna die, who knows what's gonna happen.
People weren't sure what to do. Some people were debating, they were in the shul. Were they looking? Were they not looking? Some people were outside, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Everyone was trying to find a way that they weren't actually there at the time. But we knew that we were actually dancing. It was in front of us. It happened just right there. And we were just in total shock.
Mordechai Fishman decided, you know what? We can't allow this mistake to ruin the atmosphere of Simchas Torah. We have to get everybody back into it. So he tried as hard as he could to start dancing again and start singing again. Ashreinu, matov chelkeinu, manoim garolei. But nobody was into it anymore. It was over. Everybody was just dragging along. Nobody wanted to dance. So he finished up the Hakafas quickly, and then he decided, you know what? We're about to start the Torah again from Bereshis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'haaretz. So he said, let's use the Sefer Torah that fell, let's honor it by starting over, symbolically hinting to everybody there that just because the Sefer Torah fell doesn't mean we can't start over. Everybody crowded around, they called up Chasam Bereshis, and meanwhile the man who dropped the Sefer Torah was still outside. He was crying, he was beside himself, he didn't want to come back into the minyan. As the fellow who was supposed to have the aliyah approaches, and he gets up there, and he makes the bracha. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'noseh lanu es teraso, Baruch atah Hashem nosein haTorah. Amen. They open the Torah, and the Balkorah doesn't start. He's quiet. No, hefsek, you gotta start, the bracha was made. And he starts motioning to people, he says, come here.
The Balkorah says, what is this? We're like, what do you mean? He's like, there's no Bereshis bara. What? We all take a peek inside the Sefer and we see that there's nothing there. The words Bereshis bara are missing. They're not there.
Which means that the Sefer Torah that fell wasn't even a Sefer Torah. It wasn't a puzzle Sefer Torah. It was never filled in. It's like a chumash.
We wrapped the Sefer up and we just ran 5 mispalim out to the one who dropped the Sefer. And we're like, you won't believe this. He's like, what? Just leave me alone. He says, no. A Sefer never fell.
And they brought him back and the guy breathed a sigh of relief, thinking to himself, wow, all right, that was a close call. There was one Israeli fellow in the building that knew the owner of the Sefer Torah, who wasn't present in the minyan. And the owner of the Sefer Torah was also Israeli. So this Israeli fellow calls the owner that day, literally like a couple of minutes later, and he says, did you know that your Sefer Torah is puzzle? It's not even a Sefer Torah.
And he says, what are you talking about? It's not a Sefer. I have 3 computer checks. People checked it 5 times. It's impossible. What are you talking about? And he says, Menachem, it's missing Bereshis bara Elokim.
So he thinks to himself and he says, oh my goodness, I just remembered. When I commissioned the Sofer to write the Torah, the custom is that he leaves a couple of words at the end for people to write it in before the Achnasa Sefer Torah. The Sofer called me and he said, some people like to fill in both bookends of the Torah. So before I write it, I want to let you know, I'm going to leave the first couple of words blank so you can fill in the bookends of the Torah.
And when they came to the Achnasa Sefer Torah, they totally forgot that they left that first beginning out.
When the man dropped the Sefer Torah, he thought it was a kosher Sefer Torah. He thought it was a perfect Sefer Torah. And that's why he got so upset. He was so embarrassed. He was so devastated because of it. As soon as he realized the Sefer Torah wasn't perfect, and because of him dropping it, as a result of the fall, the Sefer Torah became better, he was relieved. If we can take that message into our own lives and realize that we are not perfect either, we are a work in progress. And every time we fall, it's an opportunity to grow and become better and become kosher. So instead of being devastated, instead of feeling bad about every mistake we make, every fall we have, let's utilize those opportunities to open ourselves and start over and fix the mistakes.